The anime begins with the protagonist reflecting on the meaning of seeing. He was born without the ability to see, and his family has already accepted this reality. Even so, everyone asks him to keep trying and to be proud of himself, because they believe he has the eyes of a hero. Still, the boy continues to question himself, trying to understand why he cannot see like others do. Shortly afterward, Kunon is called by his teacher to begin his lessons. He is taken to the classroom by one of the mansion's maids. Kunon finds sword training somewhat complicated, but the maid comments that with magic he can accomplish impressive things. The boy starts thinking about how far he could go without someone's help, knowing that he cannot move around on his own or perform tasks without support. After some time, Kunon finally arrives at the room where his master is, the one responsible for teaching him how to use magic. During the lesson, the teacher asks what he is already capable of doing. Soon after, using his wand, Kunon casts a water spell, surprising the teacher by already mastering that type of magic. Curious, Kunon asks what size that water magic is. The teacher replies that it is about the size of an eyeball, but upon realizing what she said, she apologizes and promises to make it up to him. Kunon then realizes that he can see magical manifestations, which makes him extremely excited. He also begins to find it strange that he always eats without worrying about what he is consuming, finding everything very curious through touch. When he tastes lettuce, he thinks he is eating some kind of grass, until the maid explains that it is a vegetable called lettuce. Then she says that what covers the bread is butter. When he picks up another fruit, even before she says anything, Kunon recognizes that it is an apple. The maid notices that he has been trying many new things and showing a lot of curiosity. When he smells a strawberry, he notices that its scent is very strong. The maid gets a bit too excited and starts pressing different foods against his cheek so he can guess what they are. Kunon gets slightly annoyed, and she apologizes for getting carried away. Later, Kunon's teacher arrives at the library asking which book he would like to listen to that day. He asks for a work about the history of the Holy Knight of Hungary. The teacher is surprised by the sudden request, but the maid assures her that it is fine. She warns that if the content becomes too heavy, Kunon can ask to stop. The boy shows that he wants to learn many things and is becoming increasingly curious about the world. Then it is explained that long ago, a great war occurred involving heroes from many lands and the demon lord. The hero of that kingdom, Histoa Hunglia, managed to defeat the enemy, but lost an arm and a leg in the battle. After the war, some of that hero's descendants were born missing body parts, such as arms, legs, or even their sight. These children came to be seen as the reincarnation of the hero, bearing what are called the hero's scars. Kunon states that he is just himself and that he uses his own magic, managing to duplicate several spheres of water. To him, mastering magic means being able to see and feel the world. However, whenever he uses magic, he becomes extremely exhausted and ends up fainting. When taking him to his room, the maid asks whether all the affection she gives him is not enough. Kunon replies that it is more than enough and thanks her for always taking care of him. Even so, she comments that if love is not enough, the solution would be for them to sleep together. But Kunon says he does not need that right now. He acknowledges that he still does not have enough knowledge or physical strength to use more advanced magic. The maid believes he needs to eat better. After all, he is only 7 years old and needs to grow strong. Kunon feels that he is lagging behind other children and becomes frustrated for fainting while using basic magic. The maid asks him to take it slowly, respecting the limits of his own body. Kunon comments that he would like to develop muscles, but running or walking is very difficult for him. She then suggests training sword techniques, which excites the boy. Aiko decides to speak with Kunon's father to hire someone qualified. Before leaving, Kunon thanks her for the help. While Aiko gets excited thinking about a possible raise, Kunon only asks that she not make too much noise during his magic training. Aiko is happy and says that if she did not feel his presence, she would be crying that night. The next day, a fencing instructor is hired to train Kunon. During the training, Professor Jenny appears unexpectedly, and the instructor cheerfully comments on how quickly the day passed. Jenny notices that Kunon has started practicing swordsmanship, and he explains that to use magic, one needs knowledge and physical strength. Observing more closely, She realizes that Kunon has changed a lot since the last time she saw him. Before continuing, she asks if he wants to rest. But Kunon prefers to keep training to improve even more. So she decides to review the spell Aori, known as water magic. Kunon casts the spell, and everyone becomes excited when several water spheres appear. The teacher is shocked, as he reached that level almost on his own, even finding it frightening. The scene shifts to Mirika, Kunon's future wife. The maid informs her that the carriage has arrived and that she should go see him. Mirika comments that Kunon has always had an apathetic expression, but the maid reminds her that everything was decided by the royal family. During the journey, Mirika explains that Kunon bears the hero's scars, something important to the kingdom of Huglia, and that the political marriage is a royal duty. When they first met, she wanted to play with him and discover what he liked. But Kunon always seemed distant and sad, saying that he could not do anything on his own. Returning to the present, Mirika feels sad thinking that she would see that dejected face forever. However, upon arriving, she is greeted by Kunon with a smile, which confuses her. She wants to understand what changed, since he seems happier. Kunon explains that he has come to like her, surprising Mirika. When he shows his abilities, creating a rainbow above his head, she is enchanted. Kunon apologizes for having troubled her before, and she also apologizes. He asks her to listen to his stories, as he has experienced fun moments. Mirika falls even more in love upon seeing him so cheerful. On her way home, she feels radiant, considering it a wonderful day and looking forward to seeing him again. The scene returns to Kunon, who is surprised to realize that, for the first time in his life, he reached out his hand to someone. The maid celebrates, saying that this proves he is a true gentleman. The next day, Kunon asks the teacher to read more about chivalry, as he wishes to be worthy of Mirika. The final scene shows the teacher, aware that all of this is something impossible for her. She realizes that she can no longer maintain 7 water spheres at the same time, and soon understands that Kunon has evolved far too quickly. In a short time, there was little more she could teach him at that level, so she decides to move on to intermediate magic. Her initial plan had been to teach only basic magic to a child, something she had always wanted, since it required less effort and offered a good salary. Although useful, magic is never completely safe, and Kunon is still very young to deal with advanced techniques. Even so, the girl understands that it is too early to give up and decides to continue the job. After all, she also needs to support herself. The next day, she decides to teach Kunon how to put feelings into water. To demonstrate, she creates one icy sphere and another hot one, showing how this gives originality to the spell. To her, this ability defines a mage's individuality, and can even be seen as a clear difference in talent. Next, Kunon decides to try. He uses his magic and asks Aiko to taste it. When she does, she realizes it is plum juice. The teacher is shocked, because he accomplished in seconds something she had spent the entire night studying. She asks if it was difficult, and Kunon replies that it was not. At nightfall, he decides to test it with 2 apples, trying to better understand aroma. However, he encounters difficulties, since he cannot see colors. Without understanding them, he cannot cause magical changes or create eyes. Even so, he decides to continue, because he wants to see everything that exists in the world. At dawn, Kunon goes downstairs for breakfast and realizes that he can see colors using magic. Aiko is surprised, but he believes he still cannot see properly. The girl becomes irritated, so Kunon explains better. He sees colors through magic. He picks up a green apple and says it is red. Aiko realizes that, to him, colors are different, and that he still does not know their names. Kunon agrees, saying it is the first time he has ever seen these tones. Aiko then explains that the apple is light green. Kunon becomes even more confused, realizing that feeling something may be even harder to learn. Aiko asks how many apples are on the plate, and Kunon answers that there are 5, 3 red and 2 green. Aiko is fascinated by the boy's progress, and can hardly wait to see what will come next. When she tells Kunon's father about this discovery, he is surprised to learn that his son can now distinguish colors. Aiko explains that the range of this effect is limited, but enough to differentiate shades, becoming clearer the closer he is, especially through touch. The father asks if Kunon can read, and Aiko replies that he can, since he identifies the color of the ink by running his finger over the letters. He still needs to learn reading itself, but he is already enchanted by books and illustrated guides. The man asks whether the boy would not like to return to the main house, as he did not want people to worry about him. Aiko thinks it is better not to, because Kunon is discovering many new things, and that could interfere with his goals. The next day, Kunon manages to create a red water sphere, but his family suddenly appears, and he drops the sphere on the ground. The liquid covers him in red, and his mother faints upon seeing the scene. The teacher observes everything and realizes that Kunon possesses an absurd amount of magic. She does not know how far he can go, but she believes he may reach the greatest title in the magical world, the Blue Mage. The scene shifts to the father talking with Kunon's brother, considering taking him to a noble school. He explains that Kunon has rarely left the mansion since birth and may be frightened by the world and unfamiliar people. Therefore, he asks the older son to take care of his brother. The boy remembers that before he could not protect him and feels afraid, but promises that this time he will do everything he can to help. He decides that, no matter the cost, he will be a true older brother. The scene returns to Kunon, who can now read several books, making everyone happy with his progress. The teacher arrives shortly after and notices the cheerful atmosphere. After teaching Kunon about knightly behavior, she remembers that Aiko also wanted him to have a sense of humor and wonders whether it was working. An elegant and amusing man suits Kunon, even if he seems a bit strange. Even so, she acknowledges that he is much better than before and far more adorable. At nightfall, Aiko decides to take him to meet his father. Before that, she asks Kunon to warm her a little with magic, and she feels better. Kunon asks if he did something wrong to be scolded, but Aiko says no, reminding him that he had already been warned when he created the blood sphere. Upon arriving at the main house, the butler welcomes them, and soon Kunon's brother appears to greet them. As they head to their father's room, the brother asks if Kunon needs help, but he replies that he does not, since he can feel everything around him. The brother becomes excited upon realizing how strong Kunon is becoming thanks to magic. In the presence of their parents, the father decides to speak seriously. He asks whether Kunon still does not wish to attend school. Kunon replies that he does not, because he thinks he would bother people and prefers to prioritize other things at the moment. The father says he wants his son to do what he thinks is best. Kunon asks if there will be any problem if he does not go. The father explains that all nobles are required to attend school, and that, technically, Kunon also belongs to an aristocratic school. Kunon asks if that is not enough, and the father explains that, due to the circumstances, the king granted special permission for him not to attend. Even so, he asks Kunon to think it over. The boy then asks only how he should spend his allowance. The father shows concern about Mirika and asks Kunon to take this more seriously. Nobles who do not fulfill their duties end up at a social disadvantage, and this could harm Princess Mirika's future. Faced with this, Kunon decides to go to the academy. At first, he finds it all a nuisance. The father explains that he does not need to study for years, only take the promotion exam. There are 5 tests, so it is enough to go 5 times to obtain the official diploma. The brother comments that he and Princess Mirika will graduate in the next exam and will end up together. If that is the decision, the mother will take care of the preparations. Before leaving, the father reminds him that other members of the royal family study there, and Kunon may end up meeting Mirika. The brother assures him that everything will be fine. The scene shifts to Kunon talking with Mirika, telling her that he will go to the academy for 5 days to take the exam. Mirika is very happy to be able to spend this time with her future husband. Kunon does not fully understand how school works, but he promises to do his best. He feels a bit uneasy, thinking that other people might be jealous of the princess. He soon senses a certain tension and wonders whether Mirika lacks popularity. Kunon considers buying a wand for self-defense. As he boards the carriage, he casts a spell to prevent it from shaking, since his father had commented that this caused back pain. The brother asks if Kunon is afraid of going to a distant place, but he replies that he is not, because he is much stronger now. Even so, he knows that he caused concern when he fell and got hurt in the past. For a long time, he carried the guilt for all of this within himself. Kunon then explains that everything is fine now. Before, he felt a constant desire to simply disappear. But that feeling is in the past. In the present, he is determined to live, no matter what happens. His brother clearly notices how much Kunon has changed. The boy states that even if all the humans in the world were to disappear, he would still intend to keep living, because he carries a strong desire to survive. Upon arriving at the academy, Kunon is welcomed by his beloved wife. Before entering completely, he lags behind a little and begins to feel the presence of many people around him, as well as hearing countless voices. He knows that if he were the Kunon of the past, he would probably have hesitated to take this step and enter the school. The scene then shifts to the teacher responsible for accompanying him. She remembers when she first met him, when he was still very young, and wonders whether she will be able to guide him properly during those 5 days. As she observes him closely, she realizes that Kunon has matured a great deal and is even walking ahead of her. Even so, she calls out to him and officially introduces herself as the school's teacher and the tutor who will be accompanying him. While they talk, some students appear, commenting among themselves about Kunon, saying that he is the only one to have received that blessing in 100 years. One of the boys shows irritation, while his friends think Kunon is nothing special. However, the jealousy truly surfaces when he sees Mirika at Kunon's side. Upon entering the classroom, the teacher asks whether Kunon already knows how the exam works. He replies that it consists of 5 days of tests. She confirms this, explaining that each test has a specific time limit. After completing the exams, Kunon manages to get everything right, leaving the teacher very satisfied. The scene shifts to Kunon walking through the school corridors until a boy appears and starts provoking him, saying that he does not believe Kunon really received his father's blessing. This boy is Lyle, Mirika's brother. Realizing that the situation could turn into a mess, Kunon decides to settle it once and for all. He uses the water around them to create the illusion that the prince has gotten wet, making it look as though he has urinated on his own clothes. People begin to laugh, and Lyle runs away in embarrassment. Kunon's brother panics at the scene, but Kunon is thinking of only one thing: eating a hamburger. The episode ends with Mirika's brother consumed by anger toward Kunon. And that brings the second episode to a close. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. I'll see you next Sunday with more of this anime. Bye. However, soon we see Lael walking through the corridors, consumed by fury, as if she were planning revenge. Later, Kunon asks Mirika about what happened in the dining hall and why Prince Lael placed himself in his path, clearly showing his violent nature. Mirika replies that he came only to pressure him, reminding him that her brother is the 6th prince, while she is only the 9th princess. Because of that, her position in the royal hierarchy is lower. However, her fiancé bears the scar of the hero, being a highly prestigious mage, which quickly elevated her status. Now that Kunon has shown his true worth, he will stand above high society. Despite everything, Mirika says she is happy to be his fiancé, and Kunon comments that when he meets the king, he intends to kneel as a sign of gratitude. After that, he says that he would like to apologize to Lyle, but neither he nor Mirika allow it. Soon after, they head off to meet the teacher. They are informed that this would be Kunon's final test, in which he would need to learn how to modify the texture of water. Kunon turns the water into ice, but the shape resembles an apple. Jane then suggests that he touch different objects to reproduce their textures, something that will be seen later. At another moment, Kunon is playing horse, which Ino finds strange. At that instant, Mirika appears, and Kunon comments that he barely feels the passage of time. He says that on the last day, when he hears the teacher's voice, he feels as if the world fills with a deep sadness. Mirika responds in an exaggerated way, saying that he will not leave until sunset, which drives the sadness away in seconds. After that, the three move on together. Kunon is excited for the final exam, because all of that makes him feel as if he were in a real school. Although it is also sad to know that he will not continue there with his teacher. She says that she will be watching and wishes him good luck. It is clear that there is a great deal of trust between Kunon and the teacher, something built throughout the examinations. The teacher comments that she became an instructor to follow in the footsteps of a man she admired, with whom she studied at a school for nobles. However, that man did not pass the final exam, and she ended up alone. The other two do not fully understand how a teacher can share her life story with a student. Meanwhile, another student talks to Mirika, asking her to introduce him to Kunon. With all the posture of a knight, Kunon introduces himself as the fiancé of Princess Mirika Uglia and the younger brother of Ixia. This relieves him because he discovers that his sister and his fiancé had friends, since no one usually spoke to them. Mirika explains that if she seemed distant, it was only to spend more time with Kunon, asking her friends for a bit of understanding. Kunon thanks the princess for her consideration, but admits that he had been worried, even though he never directly asked whether they were lonely at school. He is happy to know that his sister was not alone and that the princess had friends, otherwise he would have tried to comfort them, saying that there is no problem in not having friends. This confusion leaves everyone speechless, but Mirika understands what he meant. Kunon confirms it, stating that humans can live well on their own, which sounds intriguing to everyone. Already in the classroom, Lyle is informed that the time for the exam has arrived. He orders everyone to wait for her, but his subordinates doubt that, even though he is a prince, the teacher would decide to wait. After all, it is an official examination. The bell rings, marking the beginning. The students sit in their seats. Our protagonist was about to be guided by Mirika when Lyle appears and separates them. People begin to murmur, and Lyle notices this, remembering what the maid said at the castle. He becomes furious, since no one had ever dared to challenge him in that way. Suddenly, Kunon grabs his hand and introduces himself. Surprising everyone, Lyle demands that he let go, but Kunon holds on firmly, comparing himself to a biting turtle, and says that he is his brother-in-law, so the proper thing would be to get to know each other better. Thus, they enter a verbal confrontation, making it clear that he did not give him permission to touch him. Kunon points out Lyle's masculine bearing and states that, if he could see, he would be so impressed that he would smile when he lifted his chin. This makes Lyle blush, drawing laughter from everyone. Embarrassed, the blonde asks Kunon to let go. He obeys, and the matter ends there. During the exam, the prince shows good performance, albeit a bit reflective. In the end, after the evaluation, the teacher announces that everyone has passed. With that, Kunon returns home, says goodbye to his classmates, and even to the teacher, to whom he extends his hand to his brother. Lyle watches the scene smiling and comments something with his colleagues before leaving. Back at the place, Jane asks Kunon to practice magic by creating a whirlwind. He begins by forming a sphere of water and making it spin. Next, they ask him to stop the movement and divide the sphere into 10 parts, which Kunon manages with effort. Then, they request that he change the colors to red, green, and yellow, as well as alter the texture, something he accomplishes without difficulty. Jane congratulates him, saying it was magnificent. Before stopping, Kunon asks for one more moment, explaining that he made an extra modification, adding shape and temperature to the texture. Thus, we see the water gain solid form and shoot away. Jane is startled and falls to the ground, saying that it was too much. After some time, the two appear having tea. Jane says that she wants to talk about something important. Kunon thinks it must be the graduation celebration dinner, and says that she is also invited. However, Jane says it is not about that, although graduation is a good moment to tell the truth, asking whether he is mentally prepared, because what she will say is extremely shocking. Kunon shows concern, takes a sip of tea, and before continuing, asks Aiko to leave. As he goes out, he clenches his fist, feeling that it is too much. Suddenly, Kunon imagines that Jane is a goddess of the night sky, about to depart and return to her own world. Jane likes him. This is Kunon's story, but it is not limited to just that. The truth is that, for her, there is nothing left except to continue teaching. She confesses that, for some time now, she has felt that she has nothing new left to pass on. Everything she knew about elemental magic, especially the kind that was not focused on attack, had already been taught. Now, Kunon can handle magic better than she herself can. Jane believes that she would only need to learn some kind of unprecedented magic in order to surpass him again. Hearing this, Kunon stands up and says that this is not true. He admits that he always liked her tricks, the creative ways she used to make the content understandable and interesting. Even so, when she tried to teach him using only pure magic, Jane had already realized that Kunon had noticed her desperation, which, in a way, made her feel more at ease. Kunon then says that his own magic expanded precisely thanks to her tricks. He remembers when they talked about Aori, comparing the sphere she had created, and how that opened his eyes. Jane gave Kunon a purpose in life, something that involved much more than simply casting spells. The tricks taught him about the depth of magic. Because of that, Jane asks whether he should not stop repeating these techniques. She comments that she made a great effort to invent something new, trying to deceive him, but nothing seemed to work. Kunon refuses to believe that she was really being deceptive. He asks whether she intends to leave because of the salary, saying that he can ask his father to pay more. However, Jane makes it clear that this is not it. She cannot stand receiving so much money when she feels that she no longer has anything to teach. Before, she managed to keep going, but now she can no longer continue in the same way. Standing in front of him, Jane says that Kunon should learn from a wizard better than her, someone who could still help him evolve. She admits that she managed to deceive him up to that point, but she cannot continue like this. For Kunon, even if they were tricks, the fact that she was able to think of so many for such a long time already showed incredible talent. He says that he would like her to continue being his teacher, even if she were an elegant deceiver. Kunon does not want anyone else in that role. While she was saying this, some aquatic animals began to approach, making it clear that Jane truly could no longer continue as his teacher. Kunon's magic had already gone far beyond hers. Finally, we see Jane leaving. For her, there is no doubt that Kunon is a genius and that he can reach the title of Blue Mage. Even she, being considered a genius, had to work very hard, surpassing her own limits repeatedly in order to evolve. She states that she cannot afford to lose to her student because it is still far too early for that. The days pass, and Kunon discovers that Professor Flora also resigned. She congratulates him, saying that he has already completed the entire curriculum. Kunon laments not having been able to say goodbye, but Aiko explains that Flora did not want to, because she might end up crying. Faced with this, Kunon decides to write a letter of thanks. Aiko supports the idea and even asks him to find out whether, at the mansion, there is any employee between 18 and 25 years old, well-paid, tall, and handsome. Hearing this, Kunon becomes dejected. He asks whether she might leave when he gets married. Aiko apologizes, but confirms that yes, she will. She says that now they can already live on their own without problems, so it will not be necessary. This makes Kunon even sadder, and he says that he will not be able to deal with it. He tells the story of a rabbit that died when it felt lonely. Irritated, he exclaims that he will not ask Flora for anything else. During a family dinner, Kunon says that Flora recommended that he look for a talented wizard to train him. Ino comments on rumors about the existence of a powerful royal wizard at the school, named Zio, also known as Sionli Fin Royal, famous for his appearance and for possessing an absurd amount of mana. Kunon's father reacts firmly, explaining that a royal wizard holds an official position in the castle, answers directly to the king, and cannot receive orders from anyone outside the royalty. In addition, these wizards rarely leave the castle, and access to them is extremely restricted. Even understanding the difficulty, Kunon imagines an unlikely plan to reach the castle and encounter a wizard by chance, an idea that his father immediately rejects. Kunon then turns to his mother, who ends up agreeing and asks her husband to at least present the proposal to the king. To end the discussion, the father agrees to present the situation to His Majesty. In the royal castle, an albino woman analyzes documents related to an unusual case. A child apprentice wizard requesting direct training from a royal wizard. She comments that power and status do not impress wizards of that level, but mentions that her younger sister, Mirika, was enchanted by Kunon. Upon reading the documents more carefully, the man is surprised by the boy's name, showing great interest in the protagonist's potential. Upon returning home, the protagonist had no idea how his life was about to change. His father did not imagine it either, since it had never crossed his mind that those people would arrange a meeting so quickly. In addition, he knew that the matter of a magic instructor would also come up. The boy, for his part, found that man's power simply impressive. However, his father explains that it was not exactly that. According to him, everything indicated that the court mage had taken a personal interest in Kunon. Curious, the father asks what kind of magic his son had learned recently. Kunon then demonstrates Ori magic, creating a cat with an incredibly detailed form. The father is visibly impressed by the level of control his son displays. Even so, Kunon comments that the creature's movement seemed a bit artificial, and that, in the future, he would like to be able to reproduce even the sound of meowing. Noticing how much his father likes animals, Kunon asks why they do not keep one at home. The man immediately refuses, saying that it would end up disrupting the family's routine and making work more difficult. Even so, Kunon does not find the justification very convincing. He recalls that, with the wealth of the Gurian Marquess family, it would be perfectly possible to gather adorable cats from various parts of the world. The father explains that the decision not to raise cats had already been made, because they would all end up at his feet, which could cause accidents. Kunon accepts the explanation, but the father soon reminds him that Tina loves dogs. Kunon agrees and realizes how his father always takes the entire family into consideration. Still, Kunon suggests the idea of raising cats outside the house. He mentions that Eiko once said that keeping outdoor cats is a symbol of status among nobles. In addition, Princess Mirica herself also said that it is a sign of prestige. Upon hearing this, the father immediately shows interest in the idea of keeping cats outside the residence. Shortly afterward, they finally arrive at the royal court. At that moment, we are introduced to Lesia. The father warmly thanks her for such a friendly reception, while Kunon also speaks up with his characteristic politeness. The man comments that he wishes Kunon were as charming when speaking as he is with a second princess, reminding him that Lesia is his sister-in-law. The young woman says that she has heard many compliments about Kunon from Mirica. Observing more closely, Lesia notices that Kunon is holding a cat, but soon discovers that it is made only of water. The father ends up quite disappointed upon realizing that it was not his new pet. Lesia then decides to take Kunon directly to the Black Tower Hall, while the father goes to greet the king. Before they separate, the father asks how Kunon intends to return. The boy replies that he can return on his own, since he still needs to visit the princess. The father insists on calling a carriage for him, but Kunon, being more clever, decides to go to a restaurant, the same one his parents usually frequent. The Black Tower is located on the other side of the castle. Upon entering, Lesia asks whether Kunon can walk without difficulty. He answers that he can. Noticing his anxiety, she tells him that he can say whatever he wants. Kunon then begins asking questions about the essence of a mage, addressing only subjects related to advanced magic. Lesia admits that she does not know how to answer, since she is still a beginner, and decides to change the subject, explaining more clearly how the royal family works. She explains that the current royal family of Hungary is composed of 7 princes and 10 princesses. In many countries, succession to the throne is defined automatically, with the first prince inheriting the position. However, in Hungary, there is a strong system of meritocracy, where performance can alter the order of succession. Kunon comments that this seems quite complicated. Lesia agrees and reveals that she dreamed of becoming a great mage, which is why she gave up any right to the throne. Moving on, Kunon feels an enormous concentration of magic, coming mainly from one of the towers. Lesia explains that Mirica is very worried about the succession dispute. Suddenly, she is surprised to see Kunon using magic in a frightening way. He creates ice beneath his feet and begins to slide across the floor as if he were skating. Kunon asks whether she would like to try as well. Lesia agrees, but asks him to wait a little. She advises him not to act recklessly, not to get involved with any faction, and also not to sign or take responsibility for any important documents. Then she asks him to make her slide as soon as possible. The two begin moving quickly through the corridors. 2 guards try to stop them, but are left behind due to their speed. Soon, Dario appears and asks what is going on. He notices Kunon and Lesia passing through several parts of the castle until he finally manages to catch them. After being stopped, both apologize. The scene then shifts to Kunon's father asking what happened. A man replies that a mage was causing trouble in the castle, but that he had already been captured. The father realizes that it is his son and becomes worried. Next, we see Kunon talking with Rondamund Actard, the official court mage. Kunon introduces himself and immediately senses the man's impressive power. He thought Lessia's magic was incredible, but he realizes that the director is on a completely different level. Rondamund comments that he heard Kunon possesses the water crest. The boy confirms it and shows that it is on his arm. The mage asks whether the crest has 2 stars, and Kunon admits that he does not understand much about it. Rondamund then explains that there are 7 magical attributes: fire, water, earth, wind, light, darkness, and arcane, each with 5 levels. Kunon asks whether 2 stars represent the most basic level, and the man confirms it. Lessia adds that she also has only 2 stars in the wind attribute. Kunon asks whether Rondamund is different, because he feels a much greater concentration of power. He ventures to say that it might be 3 stars, but the mage reveals that he has 4. Rondamund asks whether that surprises him, but Kunon says it does not, since this is the first time he has heard about crest levels. The director comments that, sooner or later, he will end up understanding. Kunon asks whether the level makes a big difference in the magic used. Rondamund replies that not so much, because what really matters is the total amount of magical power, and, above all, what the person learns from that point onward. He ends the subject by saying that now it is time to have some fun. They head outside, where several students are gathered. The director shows curiosity about Kunon's abilities. Lessia comments that she has already tested him and states that his power is frightening. The people around recognize Kunon as the boy with the hero's scar, and everyone comments that he even gave the Knight Dario a hard time. The curiosity about his magic grows even more. The director then asks a student to step forward and use his power. Upon seeing Ori magic in action, Kunon is impressed and asks whether it would be possible to steal it. He recalls that his teacher taught him that he can use spells that are already being manipulated by someone else. Even thinking this is impossible, he tries, but realizes that the boy manages to resist quite well. Even so, everyone is shocked to see that Kunon managed to steal 2 spells. The director asks to leave the boy with him, while the others joke about the situation. Lessia comments that the student had recently been dumped by his girlfriend, but he replies that this has nothing to do with the conversation. The director notices the general interest in Kunon. The boy asks whether he passed the test, but the man says that he still wants to carry out a few more experiments. He also wants to test Kunon's magic directly. Next, Kunon creates a spell similar to a trampoline, capable of making people jump. The director is impressed, and soon everyone wants to try it. Lessia comments that it must be wonderful to sleep on something like that. Kunon says that he can create something even better, capable of launching someone much higher. The director asks him not to do that, warning that if he does, he will not allow Kunon to return home that day. Even so, he admits that he has not had fun in a long time. Kunon explains that he has an appointment that night with his fiancée. Lessia then asks whether he can create people with his magic. Kunon replies that he can, but admits that the movements are still incomplete. The boy explains that everything depends on the magic used to reproduce human movements. According to him, with more training, this would certainly be possible. Curious, they ask whether Kunon can demonstrate some movement. He confirms, and then makes the doll rise into the air. The result frightens everyone around, quickly drawing Doria's attention. Kunon ends up feeling a bit discouraged. Since that day, he had already been scolded twice in a row. Even so, the old man tells him not to worry, commenting that they could continue talking about magic even during a meal. Kunon then asks whether he was approved in the test, and the man answers that he was. He says that he had a lot of fun and states that he will take responsibility for reflecting more carefully on all of it. Kunon is extremely happy to know that he passed the magic evaluation. The director then asks whether he has any goal for the next few years. Kunon replies that he would like to be able to create an eyeball using magic. The answer leaves everyone impressed, reinforcing the idea that he is very different from most people. After that, Kunon goes to talk to his father, who is visibly irritated and wants to know exactly what his son has been doing. Lessia intervenes, saying that none of what happened was the boy's fault. Even so, the father explains that a mage needs to take full responsibility for his actions. He cannot act without thinking, because magic, when poorly used, can injure someone or even cause deaths. Kunon agrees, apologizes, and says that he is sorry for what happened. When they return home, the father is impressed to realize that Kunon stayed in the tower until so late and concludes that his son must truly be very powerful. He also notices that everyone seemed to like the boy quite a lot. Lesia then reminds Kunon that he needs to meet his fiancée for dinner. Kunon realizes that it is already night and that he needs to hurry, but remembers that he is all sweaty and still has not taken a bath. Lesia suggests an idea so that he can reach the girl. Kunon then creates a sphere of water and uses wind magic to make it fly. Kunon believes that this might not be a good idea, because the girl might have a fiancé, and if he saw that, he could interpret everything the wrong way. Lesia insists that he do it quickly and reminds him that she does not have a fiancé at all. The two end up flying at an impressive speed and land in a very dangerous way. Lesia apologizes, saying that she should have gone more slowly. Kunon comments that, even so, they could take advantage of it to do more experiments. Before they can continue, Dario appears at the location and scolds Lesia, reminding her that she is part of the royal family and should not get involved in such dangerous situations. And thus, the 4th episode comes to an end. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel to follow more videos like this, and see you next week. The scene cuts to Mirika, who spends all her time looking from side to side, clearly worried, waiting to see whether Kunon would appear at the place. Her maid notices that this is the girl's first date and considers it natural for her to be so nervous. Suddenly, news arrives that Kunon has finally shown up. When she sees him, Mirika hears words she has never heard in her entire life, making her heart beat even faster. Kunon asks to hold her hand, saying that this way they could both enjoy the date better. After walking for some time, they finally arrive at the restaurant. Throughout the entire walk, Kunon does not stop praising Mirika. The maid soon realizes that Kunon has a charming manner and understands why he managed to captivate Mirika so quickly. The girl asks whether he went to the Black Tower. Kunon answers that he did, accompanied by Lesia, Mirika's sister. In addition, he also passed the test. There was still no information about who his magic instructor would be, but Kunon says he is certain that the matter will receive proper attention, just like the color and perfect shape of Mirika's nails. The maid notices that Mirika is quieter than usual, but Kunon keeps talking, telling interesting stories and, with every sentence, praising the girl even more. This starts to irritate the maid, although, with time, she realizes that Mirika is truly enjoying herself. After dinner, Kunon says that that was the most he could do at the moment. However, when he married Mirika, they could live moments like that every day. Walking together through life, he confesses that he can no longer imagine his future without her. The maid is completely shocked, but also very happy to hear those words. When they arrive home, Mirika remains enchanted by everything Kunon said, and the maid only asks her to go to sleep. The scene then cuts to Kunon at his house, having breakfast. Suddenly, his maid calls him and asks him to produce foam to wash the clothes so that no dirt remains. Kunon gets a little irritated, as he was focused on his report. The maid asks him not to strain himself so much, reminding him that he spends too much time locked in his room. Kunon explains that he needs to write everything down before he forgets. But even so, she insists that he at least get a little sun, saying that this is part of growing up. Kunon understands and comments that he believes women like tall boys. The maid replies that there are people like that, but that regardless of it, she likes Kunon the way he is. Kunon almost says that he likes her too, but stops himself when he remembers that he is engaged to Mirika and would feel bad about it. After helping Aiko, he asks whether any letter has arrived for him. She answers that not yet. Kunon imagines that his instructor has still not been decided. The scene changes to the school, and the boy goes to call Xion. Upon entering the room, he finds the young man passed out over several scattered sheets of paper. Xion merely murmurs for them not to disturb his precious sleep. The boy says that the manager is calling him, which makes him wake up immediately. Back at home, Kunon finally receives his letter and discovers that his instructor will be Xion. the same person his brother and sister had spoken about. Aiko also knows him and shows excitement, saying that there is no woman who does not know who he is. She comments that she needs a new maid uniform to receive him. Kunon asks whether she plans to dress up for another man, but Aiko asks him not to say such things and states that she needs to look even prettier for the meeting. The scene cuts to Mirika's house, where she is talking with Lesia. The two are confused because a court mage needs authorization from the royal family to go out. Lesia does not understand why they chose that man specifically, since she would like to teach Kunon herself. Suddenly, the sisters Avril and Ledalia appear and start teasing Mirika, saying that her fiancé has an impressive recommendation. Unlike her, Lesia defends her sister, stating that Kunon is a great mage and that it is none of their business. She tells them to get out of their way, and the girls eventually leave, still provoking them, while Lesia tells them not to get so full of themselves. Soon after, the scene shows Xian's arrival at Kunon's house. He praises Mirika the entire time and asks whether she changed her perfume, but she replies that she does not use perfume in the morning, because they say it is not good. Xian realizes that Kunon will be his apprentice, but does not understand what people see as so special about that boy. When Xian steps down from the carriage, Aiko is enchanted. Kunon, on the other hand, feels the man's magical power from a distance and realizes that he is the strongest he has ever encountered. Mirika asks why Kunon is so quiet, and he decides that Xian will be his example and mentor. They introduce themselves, and Xian immediately says that he hates brats like Kunon. In addition, he states that he has not officially accepted being his instructor yet, and that he only came there because he was forced to. At that moment, Dario appears, and Kunon apologizes for what he did 3 days earlier. Mirika asks how they know each other, and Kunon replies that it is a long story. Kunon realizes that Xian is a beautiful and powerful mage, but since he cannot see him, he does not know whether he is someone admirable or not. Xian asks whether Kunon is mocking him, but Kunon answers that he is not. Xian thinks Kunon is nothing more than a strange child. As they sit down, Kunon and Mirika chat cheerfully about dating, until Xian asks them to stop flirting right in front of him. Then he asks what Kunon knows about magic. Kunon explains that magic is released through magic circles drawn with magical power, which can be divided and reconstructed like a set. Xian asks up to what level Kunon can use. Kunon replies that he can reach level 31. Xian is impressed and says that he can reach up to level 50, but wants to know how Kunon managed to break the level 20 barrier. Kunon explains that he overlaps the crest. Xian is even more surprised when he realizes that Kunon does all of this on his own, even though he has used some tricks as assistance. Xian remembers that Lesia also wanted to be Kunon's instructor and comments about it. Lesia explains that when Kunon appeared on that occasion, Xian did not even show up because of laziness. Xian clarifies that it was not by his own will, but because he was forced by the academy director. Returning to the present, Xian finally understands why so many people want to be Kunon's instructor. He acknowledges that the boy is extremely talented. He then stands up and asks Kunon to show everything he can do. Before that, Kunon asks how to reach the 50 levels. Xian replies that he will not teach that now, as it would be a waste of time. If Kunon proves his worth, he can ask for it directly. Xian states that, in order to teach him, he expects to be constantly flattered. Mirika believes that her beloved would never do something like that. But, to everyone's surprise, Kunon begins to praise Xian far more than necessary, leaving everyone embarrassed. Annoyed, Xian asks him to stop calling him master, stating that he has not yet acknowledged his talent, and explains that his own crest is that of Earth, with 3 levels. Kunon is informed that he must use his magic to destroy the stone wall that was created in front of him. If he fails, that will be the last time they meet. In addition, they demand that he better demonstrate water magic, since everyone comments on how highly praised it is. When he creates a bubble for Xian to sit on, the man is surprised by how comfortable and soft it is. Shortly after, he ends up falling asleep, leaving everyone around impressed by how natural the situation is. Meanwhile, Kunon remains completely focused, gathering energy to try to break the barrier before him. When he touches the surface, he feels how resistant and compact it is. That magical power sustains both the durability and the firmness of the structure. That magic is based on a crest. The crest, in turn, is a magic circle. The caster has the ability to reorganize this circle, generating different magical effects, these circles being the foundation of all existing magic. The whole arises from the division and reconstruction of the original magic circle, representing the number linked to the essence of the spell. This value indicates the level of originality achieved. Observing carefully, Kunon realizes that the stone wall before him surpasses 50 levels of magic. Faced with this, Kunon decides to talk to Mirika. Since Xion continues sleeping, only after about 2 hours does he awaken. Xion questions why the wall has not yet been destroyed and whether Kunon has given up. Kunon answers that he did not give up, he was just waiting for him to wake up. Facing the barrier once again, Kunon decides to use the same magic he usually employs to wash clothes. Xion asks why he chose that particular magic, and Kunon replies that he considered it simpler to use. Instead of destroying the wall, he chooses to remove it. The man is surprised by this choice, because there is an appropriate magic for each type of situation. A true mage is someone capable of perceiving this clearly. After witnessing Kunon's magic, Xion decides to accept him as his disciple. He states that the boy is extremely lucky to have him as a mentor. However, he makes it clear that he does not want to see him flirting all the time, because the master must be more important than the fiancé. He then asks how Mirika intends to deal with this situation. Kunon will become his disciple and grow greatly on his journey. In a short time, several women will begin to approach him. Mirika knows this is true, because Kunon truly possesses extraordinary talent. She also understands that, if that happens, she may not be able to have a future by his side. Kunon only asks that Xion not be cruel to Mirika. Sometime later, Mirika is at home and realizes that she cannot continue that way. If nothing changes, she feels that she may end up losing the great love of her life. The next day, Kunon's instructor arrives with a confident smile on his face and immediately starts by saying that he is the luckiest man in the world for having Kunon as his disciple. He makes it very clear from the beginning that he has no intention of going easy at any moment during the training, because he believes that sparing effort only delays true growth. Kunon responds without hesitation that he prefers it exactly that way, and even adds that, if his master decided to take it easy on him, he would probably end up crying out of frustration. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the boy shows curiosity about more advanced topics, asking how a 3-dimensional magic circle would work, or even something even more complex than that. When they enter the study room, the man spreads several papers full of confusing scribbles across the table and comments, almost casually, that he had always wanted someone to transcribe those chaotic notes. Now, that task will be entirely Kunon's responsibility. The boy asks, a little apprehensive, if he needs to copy everything exactly as it is, and the master answers yes, explaining that, over time, the amount of notes will only tend to increase. He also warns that those papers contain extremely high-level state secrets, which is why he asks everyone to leave the room until Kunon finishes the work. As soon as they are alone, the master asks him to quickly create a ball of water so that he can rest a little. In less than 5 seconds, he is already sleeping deeply, as if he had no worries at all. Outside the room, the princess asks to learn swordsmanship. Even with little free time, she decides to train a bit and makes a special request to her knight, that this not be told to her fiancé, Kunon. During the training, she is disarmed with extreme ease, but even so, she continues to insist, getting back up repeatedly. Her desire is clear. She wants to become someone worthy of Kunon, both in spirit and in strength. After a long time, the master finally wakes up and, upon noticing how things are going, complains that Kunon is far too slow. Right after that, however, he apologizes, admitting that he had been sleeping since he arrived and had not helped with absolutely anything. He also criticizes his own handwriting, saying that it is the ugliest thing Kunon has ever seen, looking as if it were written with a foot. Then, he decides to explain something truly important to the boy. He says that reading and understanding are completely different things. Reading offers only information, something superficial, what a person interprets with the mind and records with their own hand, on the other hand, is absorbed by the body and turns into knowledge and knowledge, according to him, is far superior to simple information, because knowledge, over time, transforms into real power. As night falls, the master says goodbye and demands that everything be ready by the next meeting. Kunon remembers that there were several notes with strange figures and asks if that represented some kind of technique. The master replies that it would be better for Kunon to go see him the next day, so that he could explain everything calmly. Before parting, Kunon feels happy about the visit, because it increases his chances of meeting his future wife. Upon arriving at the royal castle, everyone is impressed with Kunon and begins to praise him, commenting on how much stronger he seems since the last time they saw him. Many show interest in participating in training sessions with him. Suddenly, the master appears and tells Kunon to follow him without giving many explanations. People try to stop him, saying that that place is considered land of evil. Even so, the master asks Kunon to create the water mattress, and everyone ends up falling asleep peacefully. Soon after, the boy asks if Kunon knows about magical tools, and he answers that he does, explaining that they are objects powered by a mage's magical energy. The master adds that a mage who lives by creating and using these tools is known as a magical engineer. Inside the room, the master asks if those scribbles really are notes made by Kunon, and he confirms that they are. Kunon then asks if he could live with him to study as much as possible, but the request is refused, because the master intends to hand everything over to him in the future, at the right moment. Next, he shows a magical tool that he is developing, a direct result of the figures Kunon had mentioned earlier. With this object, it is no longer necessary to go to the kitchen, as food can be heated directly in the room. He explains that his earth magic is excellent for shaping large and solid forms, but extremely difficult to use on small or soft pieces. At that moment, the director appears and invites Kunon to lunch. As agreed, whenever Kunon was at the castle, they would have lunch together and talk at length about magic. The master asks Kunon to create the water bubble, and the director ends up falling deeply asleep. At lunchtime, everyone feels much better after Kunon creates water beds so that everyone can rest. Some comment that if he wants to change instructors, he can do so at any time. Kunon replies that even though the master is a bit laid back, he is an excellent teacher, leaving everyone quite surprised. He also thanks the general director for the great choice, highlighting the good compatibility between earth magic and water magic. Kunon then asks where his beloved is, as he would like to have tea with her. The girl's sister replies that, on that day, she is taking part in the entrance ceremony of the senior noble school. The girl herself, in turn, feels sad for not being able to see Kunon. The director asks what his plans are, and Kunon replies that he only intends to take the course completion test. Taking advantage of the topic, the director talks about the magic school, attended by talented mages from all over the world, the place where all the court mages were trained. The master explains that entry is only allowed from the age of 12. There is still time, but Kunon keeps this information in his mind, knowing that it is a school with mages from all over the world. 2 years pass, and Kunon evolves drastically in magic, managing to block his master's attacks with extreme ease. The master is genuinely satisfied with the boy's progress. After countless training sessions, Mirika notices that the tools they created are able to keep objects warm with great efficiency. Upon entering Kunon's room, she sees that they have already created 7 pieces of equipment, 5 new articles about magic, and even a complete manual of magical experiments. A new tool is still under development, but the master prefers to finish it alone. Kunon remembers that the box that attracted insects excessively was a project they made together. The master does not say it openly, but he would like Kunon to go to the magic school. However, Kunon does not want to go. He believes that he already learns everything he needs from his master. He prefers to continue studying by his side, even if that means being exploited at work. The master explains that he has already completed all the translations and magical tool projects he needed. Kunon asks if he is being abandoned, but the man replies that this is not the case. He simply will not accompany him in magic anymore, since his affinity is with earth, while Kunon excels in water. Perhaps, at the water magic school, he will find an even more impressive master. The world is much larger than Huglia, and this idea begins to take root in Kunon's mind. The master comments that he might be lucky enough to meet a water mage with 3 or even 4 stars. His beloved asks him to go as soon as possible and become a great mage, promising that she will wait while striving to become a woman worthy of him. Faced with this, Kunon decides to accept and asks where the school is located. Upon hearing the answer, he becomes irritated when he discovers that the place is extremely far away. Kunon asks what he can take with him, and the master replies that only his eye. Soon after, he runs off, remembering the most important thing. There were many things Kunon could do even without seeing. In a way, he believed that everything would be fine like that. The scene shifts to Mirika, who cannot hold back her tears as she feels an intense longing for her beloved. The emptiness left by Kunon's absence weighs heavily on her heart, and she cries in silence, embracing that feeling. The master, noticing the situation, tells her to stop, awkwardly saying that she is just putting on a show in front of her boyfriend. His comment is poorly received, and he immediately earns a well-aimed kick to the leg in response. Even so, Mirika knows that during all this time, Kunon achieved remarkable results as a mage. She believes that if he manages to restore his vision through magic, it will become the greatest achievement of humanity, etching his name forever into history. At the same time, a quiet fear grows inside her. If Kunon ends up going too far, there is a possibility that he will leave her behind, following a path she may not be able to keep up with. Even so, everyone around her tries to cheer her up, offering words of comfort and encouragement. Even as they do so, they know that the master has been extremely demanding with Kunon from the very beginning. The master himself explains that the boy is absurdly talented, someone who appears only once in many generations. However, creating eyeballs through magic is incredibly difficult, to the point that he has never heard of anyone who managed to accomplish such a feat. From that moment on, everything would depend solely on Kunon. Even so, the master is certain that sooner or later, the boy will achieve this goal. After all, Kunon is his most beloved disciple, and the one he is most proud of. The scene then shifts to our protagonist, who decides to test many different types of magic, trying to advance his experiment at any cost. He alternates methods, combines elements, and redoes calculations countless times. However, nothing seems to work as expected, and he achieves no results at all. Faced with this accumulated frustration, he decides to call his brother to go to the sauna together. He asks him to also call their father, remembering that he loves the sauna created by Kunon. While doing so, he thinks that he should not wake their mother, but soon realizes that she also enjoys that place very much. In the end, the whole family ends up gathering, enjoying that simple yet comforting moment together. During the conversation, Kunon's brother comments that the experiment he is working on must be really complicated. Kunon agrees, as he knows that this is, without a doubt, the greatest challenge he has faced so far in his life. Even so, everyone tries to encourage him, saying that he will certainly find a solution for his eyes. The words of support warm his heart. Kunon deeply wishes to be able to see the faces of the people he loves and to observe the same landscape everyone else sees, without having to merely imagine it. After a long time of dedication, study, and tireless attempts, he finally manages to create functional eyeballs. The moment he realizes that he can see everything around him, the colors, the shapes, and the faces, he is completely overwhelmed by emotion. His eyes fill with tears, and he begins to cry with joy, unable to contain the feeling. However, just when he least expects it, something strange silently appears behind him, interrupting the moment and ending the episode in a sudden and mysterious way. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to follow more content. See you next week. Bye. The scene returns to Kunon, who, overcome by a mixture of anticipation and nervousness, decides to try to execute one more spell. In his deepest thoughts, he had always believed that, on the day he could finally see, the first person he would want to look at would be himself. Not out of curiosity, but out of necessity. Throughout his life, Kunon had never managed to like himself. He had always felt that he was not capable of doing anything on his own, that he needed to be guided at every step, and that, even so, everything ended up going wrong. He constantly depended on the understanding and patience of the people around him, something that made him feel even more fragile. The face he hated the most was his own. It was that face that was always tripping, getting hurt, causing unnecessary worry and forcing others to take care of him. When he finally looks into the mirror, Kunon is surprised by himself, mainly because he finds himself completely ordinary. There was nothing special there. He had no beard, he had no striking marks, and, above all, he was still just a child. Observing that face he had always hated without ever truly knowing it, he imagined that he would come to hate it even more now that he could see it. Perhaps he would feel disgust, or, who knows, there might be a chance to feel something different, maybe even happiness. In the end, Kunon realizes that it was simply Kunon, nothing more, nothing less. As he watched himself, he could not stop wondering if one day he would be able to truly love himself. Suddenly, when looking over his shoulder, Kunon feels a shiver and wonders what that creature behind him might be. His heart races for a moment. He did not believe it was Aiko, because the presence appears unexpectedly right at the boy's back. To his surprise, the familiar voice can be heard, asking if it had been called. When he tries to touch the creature that seemed to be stuck to him, Kunon realizes that he cannot touch absolutely anything, as if it were only a formless shadow. In the next instant, it appears right in front of him, and Kunon is overcome by intense happiness upon realizing that he can now clearly see the people around him. More than that, he realizes that he can see Aiko, and, without thinking too much, he concludes that she is very beautiful. Aiko is visibly pleased to hear that and happily thanks him, glad that he can finally see. Excited by the novelty, she decides to tell everyone that Kunon has regained his sight and decides to prepare a special dinner to celebrate such an important achievement. Kunon, still observing every detail, asks if she has a horn on her head. Aiko replies that she does not, but comments, in a playful tone, that maybe it appears when she gets irritated. Kunon laughs and says that he feels very happy to be able to see her beautiful face and also the horn, which he considers curious and even attractive. When he goes outside the house, Kunon begins to see the world in a strangely somber way. With tones he had never imagined, he wonders if that really is what the real world looks like. Even so, he finds everything extremely interesting, exactly as he had always imagined in his mind. Kunon asks if Aiko can see something behind him, but she answers with a laugh, asking if that would be the beginning of a horror story. She says that, if it were, she would like to hear it until the end. Irritated by the joke, Kunon asks her to be quiet, although he cannot hide a slight smile. As he walks through the house, he feels deeply satisfied, realizing that the experiment was a complete success. Kunon is happy to be able to see, but he finds it strange that there is always a creature at his back, following his every movement. When he tells everyone the news, the people are extremely happy and hug the boy, celebrating together with him. However, when observing his family more closely, Kunon begins to see strange things. His brother has a black wing, clearly visible, and his mother has one eye of each color, something that had never been mentioned before. Confused, Kunon asks if there are winged humans in that world. Aiko answers naturally that all humans are born with wings and that, when they open them, they represent freedom and the infinite possibilities of each person, allowing them to fly to the sky of their own heart. Kunon finds it strange that only he can see people that way and begins to wonder about the reason for such an unusual ability. At that moment, his father appears, but Kunon finds it even stranger because he cannot see him in the same way as the others. There are no wings, no different colors, only something undefined. The father shows great joy upon learning that his son can see again and immediately decides to inform the castle. Everyone decides to celebrate Kunon's achievement. Amid the excitement, Kunon asks if his father looks like a mist, but his brother quickly scolds him, telling him never to say something like that near him, because it would make him cry. Feeling that something is not right, Kunon decides that he needs to talk to his mentor as soon as possible. The scene shifts to the master when a white-haired boy enters the room to deliver important news. He explains that the king has granted permission for the master to depart and asks him to go to the location as soon as possible. Good news has arrived, and the man immediately realizes that they involve Kunon. The scene returns to Kunon, who sees his beloved standing right in front of him. He avoids opening his eyes for a moment, fearing that he might see her in a strange or disturbing way. However, she asks him to evaluate her beauty without delay. When he opens his eyes, Kunon sees a beautiful girl with blonde hair like the light of the morning and blue eyes like the calm sea. Even so, he notices something unusual, a feather on her head. She asks, a little insecure, if that is not his type. Kunon replies that it is not that and states, sincerely, that she is even more beautiful than a bird that sings at dawn. Suddenly, the master appears before them, but Kunon cannot see him clearly, because he shines intensely, as if he were made of light. The man explains that he has always been that way, and that he will always continue to be radiant. Kunon asks to speak with him alone. The scene changes to the master laughing loudly, but Kunon asks him to stop laughing, saying that none of that makes sense, especially because he is carrying a huge crab on his back. Kunon comments that he finds it strange to imagine that, when he marries the princess and they go to live together, he will be carrying a crab while she will have a feather on her head. The master also finds this curious, but shows himself to be even more intrigued by the peculiar way Kunon sees the world. The master then explains that there are two possibilities. The first is the ability to see the form of the soul. The second is a primitive condition caused by magical intoxication. He explains that there are many magical pools scattered throughout the world and that he has already been in some of them, feeling as if he were drunk. In that state, while his consciousness weakened, he managed to see something that had no material form. Even so, he cannot say which of the options is the correct one. Kunon asks whether his creation can be considered a failure, but the master replies that this is impossible, since it is the masterpiece of his disciple. He states that there is no right way to see the world and that each creature perceives reality in a different way. Perhaps what Kunon is seeing has a deep meaning. If that is too heavy, he can keep it to himself. Otherwise, he should continue observing until they understand it better. The master asks Kunon to keep all of this a secret. Kunon agrees and feels relieved after talking with his mentor. The scene cuts to Mirika, who shows impatience with Kunon's delay. Aiko asks her to be calm, explaining that he must be full of doubts after starting to see. Mirika agrees and asks what kind of gift she should give him. Aiko replies that anything will be enough. Soon after, Kunon and the master appear, and the man begins to laugh as he remembers the feather on the girl's head. She asks the reason, but Kunon tells her not to worry. The final scene shows everyone gathered around the table, exchanging gifts and chatting cheerfully. When they comment that the school is far away, everyone becomes sad at the thought that they will not be able to see him often. After dinner, Mirika asks if Kunon is ready for the journey. He answers that he is, saying that he will take only the essentials. Mirika apologizes for not being able to go with him, and Kunon asks her to stay calm, since everyone has their own commitments. Mirika hands the boy his birthday present with slightly trembling hands, trying to hide the emotion of the moment. When he carefully opens the wrapping and realizes that it is a bracelet, Kunon becomes immediately very happy and visibly moved by the gesture. He holds the gift for a few seconds longer than necessary, as if he wanted to engrave that feeling into his memory. Mirika explains, in a soft voice, that if anything bad happens to him at school, he just needs to look at the bracelet and remember that everything will be fine. For her, it was not just an accessory, but a small amulet filled with feelings and hope. The two then make a sincere promise that they will exchange letters frequently, no matter how busy they become or how much time passes. Kunon reinforces that he will make sure to write whenever he can. In addition, he asks Mirika to wait for him, saying that he intends to return soon, even if the road there is long. From the bottom of his heart, he wishes that she takes good care of herself until the day they can meet again. Mirika agrees, even knowing that the separation will be difficult, and tries to smile so as not to make him even more worried. At last, the day of departure finally arrives. The atmosphere in the house is heavy, and everyone who lives there becomes deeply saddened as they say goodbye to Kunon. Every corner of the house seems too silent, as if everyone knew that something important was about to change. Kunon enters the carriage without directly saying goodbye to anyone, keeping his gaze lowered, which leaves everyone even more downcast. No one stops him, because they understand that this was the only way he found to gather the courage to leave. On the way to the school, his maid decides to accompany him, realizing how much he needs support at that moment. His parents, despite the pain of parting, understand the reason why Kunon acted that way. They know that if he looked back, he might not be able to move forward. Even as he leaves, Kunon does not intend to go away forever. Even if it takes 5 years, he will return someday. This certainty is what sustains his parents' hearts, as they firmly believe in it and eagerly await their son's return. During the journey, Kunon spends the entire time lost in thought, imagining what kind of mages he will find at the magic school. He wonders what his classmates and teachers will be like and what challenges await him in that new world. His mind fills with expectations, fears, and dreams, all mixed together as the carriage moves on. The scene then changes to show several other people who are also on their way to the same destination, each carrying their own ambitions, insecurities, and hopes. All of them head toward the magic school, where their destinies will begin to intertwine. And so, another episode comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I hope to see you next week. Bye. During the journey, Aiko comments that 5 days have already passed since they departed and asks Kunon how much longer it will take to reach Darashi. He explains that they are still within the kingdom of Juglia and that the complete trip should take about a month, although they are almost reaching his grandfather's mansion. Hearing this, they ask Aiko whether she truly intends to say goodbye there. She confirms that she does, that it will be their point of separation. Kunon then remarks that she is no longer so young and perhaps should think about getting married, or she might end up alone. In response, Aiko asks whether he believes he could live without her. In a light tone, she even teases him. Would he abandon Princess Mariko to marry someone else? Kunon is left speechless and changes the subject, saying that he can already see the mansion in the distance. Upon arriving, Kunon uses his special eye. It has been 4 years since he last visited the main house. They ask the reason for the visit, and he replies that he heard about the enormous library and believed there would be many magic books, so he brought the family. He soon recalls that, on that day, his grandfather threatened not to stop dancing until they took him along. At that moment, his grandfather opens the door. They embrace after 4 years apart. Although his grandfather claims he missed him, Kunon sees horns above his head, as if he were a demon king. His grandfather announces that he will buy anything to celebrate his entrance into the academy. But first Aiko hands him a letter sent by his daughter. Even so, he remains determined to give Kunon a gift. Upon reading the letter, the daughter asks him not to spend more than 500,000 nekas on presents, an amount equivalent to 2 months of Aiko's salary. Even so, the grandfather insists on giving something secretly. Kunon asks him not to do that, reminding him that they came because of Aiko's replacement. The new maid is Rinko Round, 18 years old. She says she applied for the position because of the salary, as she wishes to open a shop after getting married. Kunon says it is a pleasure to meet her and asks whether she is Aiko's sister. Rinko confirms that she is and clarifies that she is already engaged to avoid any misunderstanding. Kunon replies that he is also committed and that he loves his fiancée as much as he loves food. Rinko promises to do her best, which leaves Kunon relieved since he will be able to continue making jokes without causing discomfort, stating that she resembles Aiko, except for the imaginary horn. While cooking, Rinko admits that she was nervous about serving Kunon, but realized that he is easy to get along with. Aiko explains that when Kunon trains magic, he tends to forget to eat, so it is important to bring him something while he studies. That way, Rinko will be able to know him better, and they will get along well. Aiko recalls the day she was assigned to serve him. Kunon's father comments that he has heard a lot about Rinko, which makes her think she might be famous and will find a husband soon. However, it is precisely her firm personality that makes the father want her to remain by Kunon's side. Aiko remembers how she met Kunon. He was serious and quiet, but gradually gained confidence. Thinking about this, she asks Rinko not to put strange ideas into his head, or she will never forgive herself. Rinko asks whether she is referring to jokes involving women. Aiko covers her ears and tells her to stop, saying she does not want to imagine Kunon's purity being corrupted by opportunistic girls. Both agree that only Princess Marika should occupy that place. Rinko promises to be careful, but admits she does not know whether she will manage. Since Kunon is too kind to women, which may be misinterpreted. Cole interrupts, saying that Kunon has a pure soul and would never do such a thing. In the middle of the conversation, they hear Kunon declare that Rinko really does seem like a womanizer. Later, while packing her things, Aiko knocks on the door and says it is time to leave. Taking advantage of the moment alone, Kunon decides to speak seriously. He asks whether she remembers when the teacher said he would not be able to live alone. Aiko confirms that she does. Kunon points out that since then he left his family, is now separating from her, and is going to the Magic Academy. But all the decisions were made by him. He then asks one final question. Will he be able to continue counting on her, even if they remain separated for years? Aiko responds sincerely that even if she gets married and has children, she will continue working to support the families and will always stand by him. The conversation ends with an embrace. Kunon rides in the carriage beside Rinko. His grandfather asks him to stay a little longer, but he ignores it and orders them to depart. Rinko asks whether he is certain. Kunon says yes, because if he remained there, he would hesitate. He takes the opportunity to ask whether it is not a problem for her fiancé to wait several years. Rinko replies that it is not, since the goal is to save money so they can open the business together. Curious, Kunon asks what kind of shop they intend to open. She says she once thought about something like making people disappear, but decided on food instead, since the only difference is that people disappear because they are eaten. Thus begins a new phase in the protagonist's life, leaving the past behind and heading toward new encounters. Upon arriving in the city, they walk around impressed by the number of magic shops. A book in a shop window catches Kunon's attention. When they enter, they discover that all the items there are magic books. Although the mansion had many volumes, few were magical, and he could barely read them. The problem is that the book costs 5 million. Rinko is shocked, but understands that they are unique pieces. The owner appears and asks whether Kunon is a mage. When he confirms, she asks him to demonstrate his magic. Kunon creates a small water cat and asks whether she is also a sorceress. The owner replies that she is not, but she loves magic and encourages him to strive hard in Daishik, because the Saint of the Holy Kingdom will arrive that year. In the previous year, an unknown prince participated, as well as the lightning from a new kingdom. Kunon finds that interesting. The young woman offers him a book by Shanli at a special price, but he refuses since Rinko is still trying to understand the value. Once outside, she asks why he did not buy the book. Kunon replies that he already knows its contents. After all, perhaps it was Sean himself who wrote it. After that, the two proceed to another shop. The seller watches curiously as Kunon continues running his hand over the fabric of Rinko's clothes, as if analyzing every detail. In that concentrated state, he finally decides what he wants to buy. He explains to the merchant that he can memorize the texture merely by touch and asks from which animal that material comes. The woman replies that it is the skin of a dark fox, a very rare species. Immediately afterward, Kunon recreates the fox before her eyes. The saleswoman is impressed and asks if he can reproduce anything, as long as he knows its texture. Kunon replies that he can, but only in appearance and in external form. He comments, far too bluntly, that theoretically he could even create women. Before he continues speaking, Rinko covers his ears and pulls him out of the shop. As soon as they leave, a group of 3 people enters the establishment. The first is the Saint, who came because he heard rumors about the dark Zoro scarf. However, they notice the fox that Kunon left behind. The Saint realizes it is magic, and that the creation dissolves at the touch. This excites the saleswoman, who asks that no one touch it. His companions joke, saying that, judging by the way it dissipated, little mana was involved, and that it is a spell the Saint does not know. After a long journey, Rinko and Kunon finally arrive in Durashik, the city where the Academy of Magic is located. Not wanting to waste time, Kunon decides to go straight to reserve a room in the student dormitory so he can live with Rinko. However, when speaking with a receptionist, he discovers that there are no vacancies, since the registration period ended quite some time ago. Kunon is surprised, as he does not remember his teacher mentioning this. At that moment, we see Randy Montand working in his office until someone breaks in through the window and states, seriously, that they need to discuss something important about his student. Returning to Kunon and Rinko, The two leave the academy somewhat discouraged. They consider staying in a hotel or even renting a house to live on their own. Rinko interprets this as a marriage proposal, but she is interrupted when the receptionist hands them a list of real estate agencies. Their excitement returns immediately. The next day, they stand in front of the house they rented. In another scene, two professors enter a dark room and receive the list of new students for a subject whose instructor has not yet been revealed. As they examine the names, one of them points out Kunon, disciple of Saiyan Li. Back with the protagonists, they return to the academy to take the entrance exam. The receptionist informs them that maids are not allowed inside. Rinko attempts to bribe her, but the attempt fails and she ends up staying behind. As he walks down the corridor, Kunon thanks her for the earlier assistance. The receptionist then introduces herself as Luval. Upon hearing her name, as usual, Kunon begins to compliment her, which makes Luval realize that it is not only the maid who is peculiar. In another panel, we see a group of students approaching, drawn by Kunon's unusual appearance. He, in turn, is excited, eager to discover what awaits him from this point forward. And so we move on to the next events of this new phase. A few days later, the scene shifts to the arrival of a letter sent by Rinko. The news is encouraging. Kunon's grades were extremely high, so high that he was accepted directly into the special class of the magic school, the most advanced and demanding class in the institution. He would not need to go through the second division like most students. He comments casually that he may have overdone it a little in the practical exam. During the demonstration, his spell ended up dyeing the entire courtyard red, creating a scene far too striking to be ignored. Even so, since the result was admission into the best class, he considers that everything turned out well. But the incident does not go unnoticed. The episode quickly becomes a topic of conversation in the corridors. Some students begin labeling him as troublesome, someone who attracts chaos. The administration is also not pleased with the commotion caused so soon after enrollment. As a disciplinary measure, they apply a punishment, 1 month without allowance. Kunon receives the news with surprise, but he does not show resentment. To him, it is part of the experience. In fact, he sees it as proof that the school is interesting and full of unexpected challenges. Soon after, he discovers another important detail. Students in the special class must cover their own expense. He asks if he understood correctly. The answer is direct. The class was created to train first-rate mages, and one of the fundamental criteria is knowing how to earn money with one's own magic. If one cannot turn talent into profit, one cannot be considered a high-level mage. The costs are high, just in fixed expenses. The monthly amount reaches 1.5 million. A classmate explains that, in addition to her own housing, she still has to pay her 2 younger sisters who work as her bodyguard. The responsibility is heavy. Kunon absorbs everything in silence. He will need to think quickly. The scene cuts to the individual laboratory of the special class. Each student has their own research room, equipped with the basics for magical experiment. The space is free, but any additional materials, rare books, reagents, instruments must be paid for out of pocket. And there is another rule. It is necessary to accumulate credits through results recognized by the professors. Without enough credits, the student is automatically demoted to the second class. The pressure is constant. While talking with other students, Kunon realizes that many have worked with magic since a very young age, already focused on profitable careers. Unlike them, he is still exploring possibilities. He begins to seriously reflect on how to use his attribute in a practical way, something that goes beyond impressive demonstration. Later, at home, he receives another notice. The saint has declined his invitation. He is advised to act with more caution. A gentleman must respect a woman's wishes and avoid any situation that generates discomfort or misunderstanding. Kunon listens, accepts the criticism, and decides to adjust his posture. As for the money sent from home, the response is also firm. No external help. Not even donations from the Holy Kingdom are permitted. The school forbids accepting money or gifts from any source. The goal is to ensure total independence. He must manage on his own. That is when an idea arises. Observing the routine of the special class, Kunon notices that many students spend entire nights studying complex formulas and testing experimental spells. The result is clear: accumulated exhaustion. Taking advantage of his talent, he develops a special waterbed infused with magic, capable of inducing deep and restorative sleep. According to his calculations, 60 minutes on it are equivalent to half a day of ordinary sleep. Thus, a new business is born. He begins offering rest sessions inside his own laboratory. The demand grows quickly. Students form a line at the door. Some professors, discreetly, also show interest. The service promises rapid recovery for those who live under constant pressure. Comments spread throughout the school. Kunon becomes increasingly well known. To some, he is eccentric. To others, an entrepreneurial genius. Reyes, in turn, is surprised by the following conversation. If she cannot charge for healing, then how does she intend to make money? She admits that healing wounds would generate constant profit, but her magic is sacred, inherited from her ancestors and blessed by God. To turn it into a business would be disrespectful. Kunon thinks quickly. If healing cannot be commercialized directly, then perhaps they can find another approach. The initial idea seems simple. Sell magical research reports. Detailed technical documentation could serve as reference material for other mages and, at the same time, generate income. The problem is evident. They are still at the beginning of their journey. The academic value of their studies, for now, would be considered low in the market. Kunon shifts his focus once again. He asks whether purification magic can be applied to physical products. According to the school's rules, that is permitted. Then he presents a new proposal to create magical tools together, combining both of their talents. Reyes hesitate. If the project succeeds, copyright issues may arise. Furthermore, her priority continues to be her family and Castle Rey. However, the current financial situation is not favorable. They are out of money. Perhaps it is necessary to take the risk. After reflecting, they decide to try. The next day, they meet Professor Thria, a specialist in light magic. She openly praises the famous magical waterbed created by Kunon, stating that she has never felt tired again since trying it. The comment strengthens his credibility within the school. Kunon then presents his new idea. He wants to cultivate a spiritual cecilia, a sacred plant that normally grows only in places considered holy, where the concentration of luminous energy is extremely high. Thria listens attentively and responds with conviction. It is impossible. Kunon is not intimidated. He calmly explains that if a sacred place is defined by a high concentration of holy power and purifying energy, then perhaps it is not necessary to find one in nature. Perhaps it is possible to recreate those conditions artificially. The logic is simple, at least in theory. If they can simulate the proper environment, the plant should react in the same way. He proposes using Reyes' natural magical barrier as the basis for the experiment, expanding and adjusting its luminous properties until the space approximates sacred territory. It is risky. It requires absolute precision. A single mistake could render the seeds useless. Even so, they decide to try. Reyes activates the barrier of light. The energy expands, forming a translucent dome around them. The air feels lighter, almost vibrating. The atmosphere changes perceptibly, as if the very space itself were being purified. Before them, the spiritual cecilia seed reacts. First, a faint glow. Then, a sprout. It worked. Thria watches with genuine surprise and begins noting every detail: barrier intensity, exposure time, plant response. The experiment is an undeniable success. The cecilia grows under artificial conditions, something previously considered impossible. Kunon is already thinking ahead. For him, it is not merely an academic achievement, it is a business opportunity. If they can properly process the plant, a refrigerated and stabilized version could become a rare medicine with extremely high demand. If the plan works, the monthly 1.5 million NECA will no longer be a problem. The obstacle is the investment. Each seed costs 200,000. 5 seeds total 1 million. If they had failed, the loss would have been devastating. There would not be another chance so soon. Now, with success before them, Reyes sighs in relief and thanks Kunon for his insistence. He replies that he prefers to hear gratitude rather than apologies. A simple comment, yet direct. The work continues. They harvest the cecilia at the exact right moment, carefully process the useful parts, mix them with stabilizers, and finalize the formula after multiple tests. The result is a topical medicine of exceptional purity, with regenerative and purifying properties superior to the common standard. The estimated value easily surpasses 1.5 million, perhaps reaching 2 million in the right market. With the deal closed, Kunon decides to pay for lunch like a true gentleman. The gesture proves expensive. The bill comes high, especially because of the wine chosen by Ray. He learns, in practice, another important lesson. When one tells a lady to order whatever she wishes, it is better to be prepared for the consequences. Back at the laboratory, his fame has already spread. Other classmates appear asking for help with their own project. Kunon jokes that if they were women, he would help without hesitation, but he ends up listening to the proposals anyway. One student wants to develop a special bacon using magical techniques to intensify flavor and preservation. Another student has a more daring goal. She wishes to fly on her own, without relying on expensive artifacts. Kunon analyzes each proposal with growing interest. Different problems mean different applications and possible new opportunities.